Hmm. See, is that good? Is that good? All right, what's up, guys? I'm back with another video. Today I want to talk about something a little bit more lighthearted than the typical conversation on this channel. I want to talk about going back to school when you're well into adulthood. For me, it would be at age 27. I want to talk a little bit about the background behind my decision, the reason why it took me so long to go back to school for my undergraduate degree, and then kind of the some of the social implications of, what does that really mean if you're a little bit older and you're still in college and obviously you're surrounded by a bunch of young people. How do you approach that? What's it like? Okay, so if you follow this channel or if you've ever heard my podcast before, you know that I'm disabled. I mentioned probably once or twice on my channel that I had reconstructive spinal surgery in 2012. And one of the sort of biggest bummers of my life was at age 21 when I had to drop out of community college. I was trying to do 2 years of community college and then transfer to a better university. But I had to drop out because I was in so much pain on a daily basis from my spine because I had like a severe curvature of my spine, otherwise known as scoliosis. But it was so bad that it was kind of like life diminishing. It like really diminished my quality of life, not only like in my ability to, sit upright or walk upright, but also just in the sense that it gave me a large amount of pain. So I had to drop out, and then I had the surgery, and that surgery took, quite a long while to recover from. But because that was such a paradigm shift, because that was such a change in my life, I kind of didn't want to go back to school afterwards. In fact, I wanted to see if I could work. I wanted to see if I could make some money. I wanted to see if I could get some real world experience. So I did. I worked in tutoring, I worked in education, I did some work with AmeriCorps. I did AmeriCorps service. I didn't finish, but I came really close. I did about like that for like 9 months or so. Great experience. Worked at a youth center. I did a bunch of other jobs related to writing and marketing and helping people with their computer, like odd jobs. Like teaching the elderly how to use their computers is one thing I did like pretty early, probably like 2013, 2014ish. That was one of my first ways of making income. So what happened is I don't want to go too deep into this story. Maybe I'll go into it a little bit later, but I had a great job at a place that I loved to work, and I was up for a promotion. And I was one of the final candidates, and I guess I was kind of arrogant at that time, and that I thought that I sort of was a lock for the position. I thought that I was a runaway for getting this job, and long story short is I did not get that job. Someone else got the job, and I became pretty butthurt about it. Probably didn't handle it as maturely as I could, and eventually I decided that I needed to quit. One of the main reasons I was told why I didn't get that job was because I didn't have my degree. I don't know like how true that is or like whether that was ultimately like the only reason. I have plenty of shortcomings, and I was probably screwing up in my own way back then, so that's pretty understandable. Of looking back at the time, it was like I was super outraged and I couldn't believe that like I had not got this job that I thought was mine. But looking back, like it's one of those things that it turned out to be a really good lesson because it teaches you not only like about yourself but about other people and your expectations and your ambitions and all that. But anyway, one of the main messages that I got out of that was that I needed my degree. And now I had sort of been of the mind for a while that I didn't need a degree because like either I was so smart or I was just sort of so different that I couldn't like work within the system. And of course, there's all like the conventional um, talk around higher education, like how it's a scam, how you don't really need a degree to be successful. And I totally like bought all of that. And still to this day, like I think most people, even people with degrees, will tell you like college is a bit of a scam, and like the emphasis placed on having your degree and search for employment is sometimes like way too much, and definitely holds people back and puts people in debt and all that. These were all my reasons, but eventually I was like, you know what, screw it, I'm gonna do this. I'm 25, 26 right now. If I dig in and do those last like 2.3 years or whatever it's gonna be, I will be able to have my degree before I'm 30. And then if I really push it, I could have a master's degree by I'm 30, in which case, in terms of education, I'm probably caught up with my peers, which Right now, I'm not, I'm a senior right now. I still haven't graduated and I'm just turned 28. So I'm pretty, grown up person going to college, not like super old, but, still hanging around to kind of, finish off the job. So, and I'm really glad that I did do it. So I'll probably get into that a little bit more. In community college, it can be kind of a depressing environment. I don't know, maybe you went to a great community college. I went to a couple. I feel like I had good school for the most part and like good peers, but for whatever reason, I think like the instructors aren't always the best in community college. So for me, at least, it felt like not the most quality education. It was just sort of something I had to get through. I remember I had a really tough time with my sciences and math, which I sort of had all left to the end. But I'm really proud of myself looking back for just sort of grinding through that because it's so easy to get dispirited in community college. Now, you definitely have motivated and smart people all around you, but you're also going to have sort of this weird high school element of these kids that have graduated high school and maybe their parents have told them, well, you got to go to community college. And it's like, well, they're not taking it seriously, and that kind of brings down the environment. Whereas when you go to somewhere like UC Davis, which is where I transferred to, it's like literally the opposite. It's like most of the people you're surrounded by are very hardworking. They're very smart. They're very capable, competent, and they want to learn. They don't treat it like a joke. And I think having a student body like that around you is pretty much, you can't underestimate that. That's like super awesome. So I did my 2 years at community college, and then I did the UC application, and I wrote my application really well. Of course, I talked about my disability, but I also talked about my work experience that I've said in my podcast elsewhere. So I think I had a really strong application, and I'll tell you what, I really wanted to go to UC Berkeley. Anyone familiar with the UC system knows that Berkeley is sort of like the preeminent school, and then also like UCLA, of course, and then the other guys sort of duke it out in that third, fourth, and fifth spot. I know UC Davis is pretty much up there, like right underneath Berkeley. Obviously, it's not far away. It's closer to Sacramento than it is to San Francisco. But in my experience, I'm so glad that I ended up in UC Davis instead of going to UC Berkeley, because UC Davis is such a wholesome environment. And maybe Berkeley is too. Like, honestly, I literally have no clue what Berkeley is like. I only know that Davis it's famous for its bicycles, it's famous for its restaurants, and a couple other things. It's famous for being an agricultural school. I did an early podcast that I think a couple dozen people listened to about soil health, because I work for a research institute on campus doing sort of marketing and content work for ag scientists, as it were. So I've learned a little bit about, agriculture and all that. So it's been pretty damn interesting. But for the most part, I felt really accepted as far as getting back to the whole thing about my age. It's definitely interesting to be around younger people. I think the fact that I'm around young, very smart, very mature people, and it seems in every class I always, sort of end up befriending or at least having good acquaintanceship with 3 or 4 like pretty excellent people. And I, before my job at the Research Institute, I worked at the Study Abroad department, which is called Global Affairs at UC Davis. I did marketing content for like trips abroad and stuff like that. But all the people that I'd meet there, like all my coworkers, like they were so smart. Like I remember one girl, she was not only working there, but she ran a camp for kids with cancer. And so it's like almost every person you meet, they're not only smart and nice and full of this positive energy, but they're like doing things with their life. And it's like kind of a town of just really smart and friendly scientists. But it's a really sort of like diverse and accepting environment. Like whether you're a minority in the sense of having a disability or in any other sense, like it just feels like, even though I am different, and I just did a whole other video about what it's like to be different when you're disabled. So I would definitely check that one out too if you're interested. But in this case, I just really feel accepted. There's certain times where, I think one interesting thing about these kids, or not these kids, but these young people, is like when you're in your early 20s, what you think about is so different than what you think about in your late 20s. Like by the time you're in your mid to late 20s, you're thinking a lot more critically about your future and your life, and you've probably been like kicked around, or at least you've been through the works in life at least once or twice, to the point where you're like, oh, okay, like this is pretty tough. Like I have to actually get my shit straight. Whereas when you're 21, I've met people who, they tell me very sort of cliche laden stories about drinking and sex and doing drugs, and I'm not going to name any names. And I have friends who don't do any of that type of stuff, but I've also have friends who've told me about some pretty extreme partying and some pretty difficult situations from more than a few people of experiences with literally like frat boys and sort of getting so this whole universe of like sort of young like romance and debauchery and like all this crazy stuff like college parties. Like I don't really get involved in that side, so I'm definitely not like a fraternity brother. I definitely don't talk to a lot of sorority sisters. Sorry for the blinds in the background, by the way. I probably should have closed my window, but I just didn't do it. So hopefully it won't be too distracting when you're actually watching the video. But yeah, I can't say I've gone to like a college rager, but I've definitely, like hung out with, done projects with, like shared meals with, like done, collaborative things. Like my partner and I at the Innovation Institute, we have interviewed scientists and he'll take photos and we'll create content pages about their research to sort of help scientists like entomologists and soil scientists kind of market their research better and give it sort of a visual appeal to help them communicate their findings to the general public. And I feel like that's a really cool job to have in the first place. So overall, UC Davis is pretty freaking awesome, and I've met a lot of students who are also older. I've met students who are in their 60s. I've met students who are in their 30s. I've met students who are like parents with kids. I've met pretty much as wide a spectrum of people that you could meet. So at least in this case, I would encourage people that if you are hesitant about going back to school when you're younger, just try not to focus so much on like the negative in that way and try to see like the positive of it and see it as like an investment. It's like, yeah, there's going to be some awkward moments or some times where you're just like, wow, like I really am kind of out of touch with like what these young people are doing. I mean, I'm still young, but tell you what, someone who's 20 years old looks like they're still a teenager to me. And sometimes you have this really weird combination of this really incredible intelligence and sort of like emotional understanding, but then also this like volatility that you see manifested in people who are in their early 20s. And I relate to that because that was so much of my experience in my early 20s of just like this emotional volatility, but also, also being pretty bright and capable. Like I still am today, I like to think, at least. So as far as the school work, I'm probably going to wrap this video up right now because it's so long. But as far as the actual school work, it's not super hard for me. I'm an English major, I'm a writer, I'm an editor. So most people at UC Davis are doing some kind of science or tech and STEM type of thing. And so I don't necessarily judge my experience compared to someone like that because that's probably a more practical degree. Like I happen to be really talented in my area of study and skill, so I make it work. But don't take my word for it as far as academics if that's your major for UC Davis or anything else. I have to write a lot of papers, I have to read a lot of stuff, and those are two things I'm really good at, writing and reading. So I think it is kind of annoying, definitely, because I also work, right? So to do homework and work at the same time, like it's really hard. And if you get to go to school and you don't have to work at all, like you realize that that's a luxury and you should be getting straight A's. Because if the only thing you have to focus on is school, then you're pretty much like you're set up. Like you don't have to worry that much. But for me, I have to work. I have to pay rent as well. So it can get pretty stressful, especially during midterms and finals. I've noticed that UC Davis things seem to like really heat up and get kind of crazy around that time. So you definitely have to plan and be organized. But at least for me, I think one advantage is like it gets stressful sometimes, but at the end of the day, it's like I have much bigger fish to fry, I have much bigger problems than like a paper or a midterm test. And it's like even if I fail a quiz or whatever, I just like I don't care. I'm just like, okay, like it's one quiz. Like I always seem to pass the class. I'm like a B plus type of student. I got a D in one class. It was like really hard. It was like kind of a stupid class actually, but maybe I was just a stupid one, but I didn't get it. So it was pretty technical in nature, but everything else is like an A or a B pretty much. That was definitely an outlier. But if you are considering going back to school, I would just definitely encourage you to do it. Don't let your age, whether you're 28 or 38 or 48, whatever, don't let your age hold you back. And I think you'll find that there's a lot of people who will appreciate you for being older and for having an older influence. And I've seen that in other classmates, and I'm not just speaking for myself, is that when you're older, obviously you're not the teacher. The teacher is still like the person in charge, but you can add a quality to the discussion and to the experience where you are serving as a sort of like a mentor figure. Obviously that's not like explicitly said, but just in the way that you conduct yourself in the classroom, the way that you contribute to the discussion, like your age and experience can actually add to everyone's overall learning and benefit. And that's freaking awesome. Like, I don't know if anyone else has had this experience, but sometimes the people who are older or in their 20s or 30s are brave enough to be outspoken, where a lot of these kids who are like 18 or 19, they don't want to raise their hand. They just want to be more passive in the background. So, you can actually bring a lot of value. So try to look at it that way. That's the way I do it too. I'm always engaging in class. I'm always engaging with my peers. I'm always trying to support people, help them with their papers if they ask me to, form a study group with them. And, like, it's just like any other social environment. You're going to meet people who you click with. You're going to meet people who you don't click with. You're going to meet people who you're friendly with and nice with, but you never develop like a deeper relationship with them. And there's going to be people who you meet where you're like, wow, like, I want to be friends with this person for my whole life. And there's a couple people who I have met in only like a year and a month of being at UC Davis. I've met like multiple people who I think could be lifelong friends, or just people who I love being around, and I believe that they like me too. And I always want to like make more friends whenever possible, like support people and like lift them up. That's like what I'm all about. So I might do another video about this. I want to see if I can like cut some footage into this of UC Davis that I took. So hopefully I won't just upload this video of me just talking. If it's just me talking, it turned out that I ended up really lazy. But thanks for watching. Please just subscribe to the channel. I want to shout out, I know it's backwards, but I want to shout out UC Davis for being an awesome school. I've had a great time there. I'm looking forward to finishing this June though. I definitely want to graduate as soon as possible. All right. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe to the channel. Check out my podcast, Defy Yourself, and I will see you next time.